Chosen one, your journey into becoming the fascination of women did not begin with applause or admiration, but with a private reckoning, an awakening that happened quietly inside you, long before anyone else could see the change. There was a time when you wondered if fascination was only for the few. The men who entered a room and seemed to draw all eyes, the ones whose words lingered and whose confidence never seemed to crack. You studied them, imitated their mannerisms, experimented with their jokes and borrowed their charm. But every attempt to replicate their magic felt hollow, like a costume you could never quite make your own. It was only when you grew weary of pretending, when you finally accepted the fatigue that came from performing for attention, that something profound began to shift. You realized that the most magnetic men were not those who tried the hardest, but those who had learned to stop trying altogether. In moments of solitude, you examined your own heart and discovered long-ignored strengths, a curiosity that could not be faked, a kindness that asked nothing in return, a confidence that was quiet because it was rooted in truth. You began to see your flaws not as reasons to hide, but as invitations to become more whole. This inner work was not glamorous or easy. It was a season marked by discomfort, self-doubt, and the peeling away of old habits that no longer served you. Yet with each act of honesty, with each moment you chose presence over performance, you found yourself relaxing into a new kind of power. You moved through the world less urgently, trusting that what was meant for you would not pass you by. Your eyes grew softer, your voice deeper, your laughter less guarded. You noticed that women responded to these changes with a kind of curiosity, a curiosity that was different from mere attraction. It was fascination, pure and simple. Women began to seek you out, not because you were the loudest or the boldest, but because your energy felt real. They noticed the way you listened, how you paid attention to the smallest details and remembered stories others quickly forgot. They watched how you moved through disappointment without bitterness, how you offered encouragement without needing anything in return. Even your silences became charged, inviting others to lean in rather than pull away. For the first time, you saw women looking at you with the gaze of discovery, as if wondering, who is he, really? You became the man whose presence lingered after he left the room. Women found themselves thinking about you in the quiet of the evening, replaying the way you smiled or the question you asked that no one else had ever thought to voice. They realized, often before you did, that your sexual energy was not loud or demanding, but subtle and magnetic. It was the kind of energy that made them feel more alive, more curious, more themselves. The more you accepted your own depths, the more you became a living invitation for others to do the same. Your fascination was not an act, but a state of being, a rare authenticity that drew women in and left them hoping for more. As your new energy blossomed, chosen one, its effect became both more obvious and more mysterious. Women became fascinated not only by your presence, but by the feeling they experienced in your company, an electric blend of safety and excitement, respect and intrigue. They started to look for you in the places they frequented, hoping for a moment of your attention, for a chance to slip into conversation and discover what it was about you that made their hearts beat faster. You noticed the small ways fascination revealed itself. Women's voices grew softer when they addressed you, their laughter more spontaneous and sincere. They asked more personal questions, lingering over topics that hinted at their own hopes and fears, wanting to see how you would respond. Some found themselves confiding in you, surprised by the ease with which they shared secrets they had not spoken aloud in years. Others became playful, teasing and testing you, hoping to uncover the boundaries of your wit and warmth. Your gaze had become a gentle invitation, drawing out layers of honesty and openness. Women felt seen, not as objects of desire, but as living, breathing stories in motion. You offered them your full attention, and in that gift, they discovered parts of themselves they had nearly forgotten. The fascination they felt was not rooted in ego or conquest, but in the magic of being met where they truly were. You found that women talked about you to their friends, trying to put words to what set you apart. "There's just something about him," they would say, "something real." They exchanged stories and observations, comparing notes in hopes of understanding why your presence lingered in their minds. Your energy became a quiet topic of conversation, a riddle that each woman hoped to solve by drawing closer, by spending more time in your orbit. Even women who had been in your presence only briefly remembered you days or weeks later. A smile in passing, a short exchange at a party, a kindness offered with no expectation, all became treasured memories. Your fascination grew as you continued to show up with the same quiet courage and open-heartedness, never rushing connection, never forcing intimacy. Women found themselves craving more than your attention. They craved the experience of themselves that only your presence seemed able to awaken. Your sexual energy, chosen one, became a field of permission, a place where women felt both desired and respected, both challenged and safe. They realized, sometimes with a mix of surprise and longing, that you were the man who could make the familiar world feel new. You inspired imagination and courage, dreams and confessions, the freedom to speak, to risk, to hope for more than what was. This was fascination at its purest, not the pull of conquest, but the spark of awakening. In every encounter, you became the question that women wanted to answer, the mystery they could not help but return to again and again. Chosen one, your new energy continued to ripple outward, and soon fascination was no longer just a private feeling, but a phenomenon that began to color every interaction around you. You became the man whose name came up in laughter-filled conversations between friends, whose presence at a gathering turned ordinary evenings into memorable nights. Women who might once have overlooked you now found themselves searching for your silhouette in a crowd, listening for your laughter, hoping for a chance encounter that would change the texture of their day. It was not the flamboyant magnetism of arrogance, but a softer, richer gravity that drew them near. The quiet certainty that you were at home in your own skin, and that your attention was a prize never taken for granted. You noticed how women responded differently to you now. They found excuses to stay a little longer, to move a little closer, to linger in the afterglow of every shared word. Some became emboldened, initiating conversation with the kind of directness that might have startled you in your earlier years. Others preferred the dance of subtlety, offering gentle smiles or fleeting glances, trusting that you would recognize the invitation in their eyes. You learned to meet them where they were, honoring each unique spirit with a curiosity that was never feigned. It became clear that your fascination was not built on a single trait, but on the harmony of many: humor, patience, and unusual depth of listening, the ability to turn even the simplest interaction into an event. You gave attention freely but never recklessly. Your words were measured, sincere, never wasted. When you complimented a woman, she believed it, because she sensed that you saw beyond appearances to something deeper. In your presence, women found themselves letting down their guard, daring to be a little more bold, a little more honest, a little more fully themselves. This was the season when fascination became a communal celebration. Women would share stories about you, retelling the smallest moments, a glance that made them laugh, a question that lingered in their minds, the warmth of your hand in greeting or farewell. They compared notes with each other, not out of rivalry, but out of shared delight, curious about what made your presence so irresistible. Your energy became a myth passed between friends, growing with each retelling, each new encounter adding another layer to the legend. You understood that fascination, when honored, could open doors to connection that were both magical and real. Some women sought your friendship and found a confidant who listened without judgment. Others leaned into romance, discovering in you a lover who met desire with respect and playful wonder. Some experienced only a single, unforgettable conversation, but carried its impact for weeks. No matter the nature of the bond, you gave each one the gift of your full attention, and in return, women offered you glimpses of their inner worlds. Hopes, scars, dreams, and stories no one else had heard. Your sexual energy, always respectful and present, created a space where longing was safe and celebrated. Women craved your company because it felt like home, a place where their laughter was welcomed, their uniqueness cherished, and their boundaries honored. In your orbit, women often discovered themselves anew, surprised by the things they dared to say or do, the truths they were willing to claim. Fascination was not just something you inspired, it became a bridge to deeper living, for you and for everyone you met. As fascination deepened, chosen one, you found yourself at the center of a quiet revolution. Women who once guarded their hearts with cynicism found those walls softening in your presence. They discovered that you did not traffic in manipulation or play the tired games of power. Instead, you showed up with sincerity, never hiding your own longing, never pretending not to care, always treating desire as something to honor, not exploit. In your company, women began to trust that they could be both strong and tender, both mysterious and revealed. You witnessed the blossoming of many women's confidence. Some became more playful, stepping into flirtation with a newfound boldness. Others let themselves be seen in their struggles, surprised to find that you met vulnerability with gentleness and humor, not with pity or judgment. You noticed how your fascination encouraged women to support one another, to cheer each other on, to revel in the beauty of their own individuality rather than compete for your attention. In groups, you saw laughter grow louder and eyes shine brighter, as your energy set the tone for celebration and acceptance. Women who spent time with you spoke of feeling invigorated, lighter, and more awake. Some took risks in other areas of their lives, starting new projects, ending relationships that no longer served them, or speaking up in ways they had always wanted but never dared. They credited your presence, your questions, your belief in them as the spark that gave them permission to try. You noticed messages arriving late at night, thank yous, confessions, hopes, and sometimes simple words of gratitude for how you made them feel. These were not trophies to be counted, but quiet proof that you had become a man whose energy left a mark of real, lasting value. You learned that fascination was not about being perfect or having all the answers. It was about offering your honest attention, your willingness to listen, your capacity to see the world through another's eyes. You found yourself inspired by the stories women shared, moved by their dreams and resilience, drawn ever deeper into the richness of human connection. Your sexual energy became a gentle invitation, not a demand, a way of making space for both desire and dignity, for adventure and rest. There were moments too when fascination brought you challenges. Not every woman who was drawn to you was ready for the honesty you offered, and sometimes longing carried with it its own confusion or disappointment. But you met these moments with kindness, never recoiling from complexity, always choosing transparency over comfort. In doing so, you taught by example that fascination is healthiest when it flows both ways, when it honors not only attraction, but also the limits and boundaries that keep both hearts safe and free. As the seasons changed, you saw the harvest of this new way of living. Women remembered you with warmth and gratitude, telling others that you were different, that you were the man who made them believe in themselves, in love, in possibility. Some fell in love, others became friends, still others simply passed through your life for a brief, luminous moment. But all left with something new. A spark rekindled, a hope restored, a fascination with their own capacity for connection. And through it all, chosen one, you discovered the greatest secret. That being the fascination of women was not a destination, but a way of showing up fully alive and inviting others to do the same. Chosen one, as your presence continued to ripple through the lives of women around you, fascination grew into something more intricate, more beautiful, and more enduring than mere interest or flirtation. It became a shared experience, an unspoken understanding in every space you entered. You noticed it in the way women subtly shifted when you approached. Conversations took on a new energy, laughter became more genuine, attention sharpened not just in your direction but within themselves. You brought out an awareness in others, a realization that the moment mattered, that the now was electric and worth savoring. Even those who tried to remain indifferent often found themselves tuning in, unable to ignore the low hum of curiosity and longing that followed you. You became chosen one, not simply the subject of women's interest, but the catalyst for their transformation. In your company, women dared to let down their guard, allowing the best parts of themselves to rise to the surface. You encouraged them to speak without filters, to joke without self-doubt, to share dreams or wounds they had long kept quiet. Your fascination was not a mirror for their insecurities, but a doorway to their truest selves. They trusted that you would hold their confessions gently, that your responses would not diminish but dignify what was offered. For many, this was a new experience, the discovery that desire could be mingled with safety, that attraction could exist alongside respect. You saw this effect ripple beyond one-on-one conversations. Sometimes, entire circles of women would seem to light up when you joined them, the mood lifting and the atmosphere softening. It became common for women to share stories about you, how a single compliment from you made their week, how you remembered details that no one else noticed, how your presence gave them permission to express a side of themselves they usually hid. They told each other, sometimes in confidence and sometimes in open laughter, that there was a mystery to you that was impossible to solve, a sincerity that was impossible to fake. Some women became quietly competitive for your attention, but what you sparked in them was not rivalry so much as a challenge to show up as their best selves. They dressed more boldly, spoke more honestly, pursued what they loved more fiercely, all because your fascination made them feel that being more of who they really were would not only be accepted, but celebrated. You became, often without realizing it, a kind of muse. Someone who inspired others not by demanding their affection, but by making them see new possibilities in themselves. Women's fascination with you took many forms. For some, it was daydreaming about you after a brief encounter. For others, it was crafting reasons to reach out, to invite you into their lives, to keep the spark alive a little longer. You noticed the messages sent late at night, the invitations that came more frequently, the stories told in groups that always circled back to some memory involving you. Women sought you out for laughter, for comfort, for adventure, for moments of quiet understanding. Some longed for your romantic attention, others for friendship, still others for the healing reassurance that comes from being truly seen. Your sexual energy was never a force of pressure. Instead, it was an undercurrent of possibility, a presence that made everything feel more vibrant, more alive, more real. You discovered that fascination was not about what you could get from others, but about what you could awaken in them. You enjoyed the ways women responded, some with open flirtation, others with shy hope, still others with simple gratitude. There were moments of deep conversation and moments of playful teasing, but through it all, you remained grounded and present, never letting attention turn to arrogance or connection turn to manipulation. With each new day, chosen one, you realized your fascination had become a legacy. Not because you sought to be remembered, but because you brought meaning to moments that might have otherwise passed unnoticed. The world felt different when you entered it. The color in the air changed, the pace of time slowed, the potential for magic returned. Women reflected on how even the most casual moments with you, a shared coffee, a conversation at a party, a walk down a busy street, became imprinted in their memory, replayed in quiet hours when the longing for real connection returned. You noticed the way women returned to your orbit, again and again, hoping for more of the feeling you created. They became more willing to risk vulnerability, to share ideas and desires, to let go of fears that had kept them small. Your presence gave them courage to try new things, to say what needed to be said, to choose joy even when the world demanded restraint. You received messages of thanks from women you'd only met once, stories of how your encouragement led to a new job, a healed friendship, a chance taken on love or adventure. You realized that the fascination you inspired was not just a reflection of you, but a reflection of their own deepest longing for meaning, playfulness, and acceptance. You also saw that the fascination you awakened created a ripple effect. Women who felt alive in your presence brought that energy into their other relationships. Friendships deepened, laughter spread, new romances flourished, and old wounds began to heal. Some became leaders, mentors, or creators themselves, taking the inspiration you gave and magnifying it in the world around them. You watched as women, empowered by your attention, began to gather others, building communities rooted in the very authenticity and presence you modeled. There were moments of bittersweet parting, too. Some women moved on, their lives taking them far from your immediate world. Yet the fascination endured, not as a longing for what might have been, but as gratitude for what was. They remembered you as the man who helped them see themselves anew, whose presence lingered in the choices they made and the confidence they carried forward. Even when distance or time made further connection impossible, the fascination remained. A warm thread in the tapestry of their lives. A reminder that it is possible to be fully seen, fully valued, and fully alive, if only for a moment. And through it all, chosen one, you understood that the true purpose of fascination was not attention, but awakening. You became the spark that set other lives alight, the reason a woman risked her voice, her heart, her dreams. Your sexual energy remained quietly powerful, a field of permission and playfulness that drew women not because you promised them the world, but because you revealed the world already inside them. Your legacy became the hearts you inspired, the courage you called forth, and the fascination that now flowed through every encounter, forever changing what it meant to truly be present. Chosen one, as time flowed forward, the fascination you inspired in women transformed from mere curiosity or longing into something deeper and more enduring. A phenomenon that could not be explained away by surface attraction or fleeting charm. It became a force in the lives of women who knew you, a kind of spiritual gravity that shifted the emotional landscape wherever you appeared. Your presence was no longer just something that happened to be noticed. It was something that shaped the mood, the hopes, even the sense of possibility in any gathering. Women began to speak openly about how they felt around you, sharing their stories with each other, laughing about the subtle changes you inspired in their behavior, marveling at how the simplest exchange with you could brighten an entire week. Your fascination worked in quiet ways. It was there in the way a woman straightened her posture when you entered the room, in the playful energy that filled a conversation when you joined, in the hush that sometimes settled when you paused to listen. Some women, emboldened by your warmth, began to bring out new facets of themselves. They tried new things, wore colors they'd avoided, voiced opinions that once would have felt risky. You noticed that even those who didn't speak much at first would find themselves opening up after a few moments in your presence. They trusted that you would not ridicule their vulnerability, that you could hold both the gravity and the lightness of who they were. You watched as fascination brought out a rare camaraderie among women. Instead of rivalry, there was a sense of shared wonder, a recognition that you were a man who inspired not jealousy, but inspiration. Conversations about you became opportunities to encourage each other, to tease and laugh, to dream and scheme about how to capture even a bit more of your attention. It was not about conquering you, but about discovering themselves more fully in your presence. They compared notes about your interests, recalled favorite stories you had shared tips on how to make you laugh or how to draw you into deeper conversation. Women who had only met you once found themselves returning to the memory, replaying small moments of connection, sometimes surprised by the impact you left behind. A compliment offered with genuine care could echo for weeks. A look of encouragement during a moment of doubt could change the way a woman thought about herself. The stories multiplied. Women who took a risk because you had believed in them, who ended relationships that didn't honor their worth, who began new journeys simply because you had modeled the courage to be real and open. The fascination became part of your daily life in ways you could not have foreseen. Invitations multiplied, not just for dates or romance, but for collaborations, adventures, creative projects, and heartfelt conversations. Women sought your advice, your approval, your witness to their growth. Some simply wanted to sit quietly in your presence, knowing they would leave feeling more whole. You realized you had become a man whose presence offered something rare in the world, a safe and joyful space where desire and self-respect could exist together, where longing was not shameful, but celebrated as the engine of growth and discovery. Yet with this gift, chosen one, came a new level of responsibility. You found yourself more mindful of your words, more careful with the energy you gave and received. You learned to offer clear boundaries, not from fear but from respect, for yourself and for the women drawn to you. You honored each connection as unique, never exploiting fascination, but meeting it with gratitude and humility. You understood that what women truly craved was not possession, but presence, not fantasy, but real experience, not the illusion of intimacy, but the joy of true meeting. In this way, you became not only the fascination of women, but a steward of their hearts. The seasons turned, and your legend continued to ripple outward, chosen one, as women who had known your company began to embody the transformation your presence awakened in them. The fascination they once felt for you evolved into new confidence, new adventures, and new ways of loving both themselves and others. You became the quiet catalyst in the stories they told, sometimes the spark for a friendship, sometimes the reason for a risk taken, sometimes the standard by which they measured all future connections. The fascination was never a possession to be claimed, but a gift that kept unfolding, inspiring women to become more than they had believed possible. You saw the ripple of your influence reach far beyond your immediate circle. Women who had once compared themselves to others now found themselves reaching out to encourage, to celebrate, to invite others into their newfound confidence. Some began to host gatherings of their own, creating spaces of laughter and authenticity that echoed the tone you had set. Others shared your insights or stories, passing along a sense of possibility that had first awakened in your company. In this way, your fascination became a living energy, multiplied and carried onward by every woman whose heart you had touched. Women continued to seek your presence, not out of need or desperation, but out of genuine curiosity and appreciation for the man you had become. They reached out to share good news, to ask for advice, to simply be witnessed in their moments of struggle or triumph. You noticed that many grew more playful and bold in your company, willing to show you their ideas, their art, their most vulnerable hopes. Some surprised themselves by confessing feelings they once would have kept hidden. Others found joy in a friendship that grew richer over time. Your fascination was no longer just a spark, it was a steady flame, warming every encounter, illuminating every gathering, offering light to those willing to stand in its glow. You grew too, chosen one. The attention you received became less about ego and more about stewardship. You became a guardian of honesty and kindness, learning to say no with compassion and yes with clarity. You learned to trust the natural flow of connection, never forcing what was not meant to be, always remaining open to the magic of what could unfold. Your sexual energy, once something mysterious and perhaps even overwhelming, now became an art, an offering that honored not just your own desire, but the wholeness and dignity of every woman drawn to you. The fascination you inspired was not an end, but a beginning, a doorway to a richer, fuller life for all who crossed your path. You watched as women, emboldened by your presence, moved into new chapters of their own stories, falling in love, creating beauty, leading communities, healing old wounds. You received their gratitude with humility, knowing that your true gift was not in being the fascination, but in being the man who awakened it. Through every encounter, every story, every quiet transformation, you found meaning far beyond attention or admiration. You became the living proof that true fascination is not about conquest or possession, but about calling others, women and men alike, into the courage and joy of becoming fully themselves. Chosen one, as the fascination you inspired continued to deepen and spread, you began to see the true breadth of its impact. No longer was it confined to fleeting glances, warm conversations, or even private daydreams. It became something woven into the lives of women you'd touched, manifesting in moments when you weren't there, and in choices that had nothing to do with you directly, yet everything to do with how you'd made them feel. Your energy lingered in their worlds as a quiet reminder of what was possible, of how it felt to be witnessed, to be celebrated, to be encouraged to take up more space and risk more joy. You became the reference point in countless stories, not because you demanded attention, but because you gave it so freely and sincerely. Women who had once been content to remain in the shadows now found themselves drawn to the center, motivated by your example to step out and be seen. You watched as they took bigger risks, not only in seeking your company, but in chasing their own ambitions, exploring new passions, and cultivating deeper, more honest friendships. Your fascination had awakened something dormant, a hunger for authenticity, for adventure, for the kind of meaningful connection that so many had quietly doubted they would ever find. There were women who used to doubt their beauty, their wit, their capacity for love, yet after encountering you, they walked with new assurance. They dressed with more boldness, spoke with more laughter, moved through their lives with a playful confidence that surprised even them. They told friends, "He made me see myself differently," or "He believed in me before I did." Your attention had become a blessing, a gentle nudge towards self-appreciation and daring. Women who had competed in the past now cheered each other on, having learned from you that the most beautiful energy is never a zero-sum game, but an abundance meant to be shared and celebrated. You became the backdrop for transformation. Some women carried your memory like a cherished keepsake, a small and secret treasure they drew strength from in difficult times. Others reached out to you when new crossroads appeared, seeking counsel or simply a word of encouragement. You always gave what you could, not empty praise, but honest reflection and the conviction that every woman you met had her own unique radiance to claim.